Welcome to Inspirational Leadership. I'm very excited for today's guest. I'm speaking with Lorie Corcuera, and Lorie is the CEO of Spark Creations. Wonderful to have you here today, Lorie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation. I love you, Kristen.
I love you too. So Lorie, talk to us a little bit before you got to where you are as the CEO of Spark Creations. Tell us a little bit around your career journey.
Yeah, my career journey. Well, I didn't really know what I wanted to do right away. I think people go to school and graduate in high school and go into university, but I graduated from high school and then kind of like experienced life a little bit before deciding what I was going to do. And then I remember the exact conversation which directed me into my career in HR. I was sitting with some close friends at a family dinner, and everyone was in university. And I remember that when it was my turn to to kind of go around and share a little bit about myself, I started to put food in my mouth because I got so nervous that I hadn't really done anything and I hadn't gone to school. So it was that moment that I said, okay, I really need to think about what I want to do in my life. And then I decided to go into human resources. And my first experience with this particular profession was I was doing some recruitment for one of my part-time jobs. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I get to just connect with people and ask them questions and get really curious about them. What can I actually do this as a profession? And that's when I got curious, went and got my BCom at UBC. And then my first job was electronic arts, got right into tech from the beginning. And then the rest is history. Most of my background has been in human resources or leadership development. 2 years before I left to start Spark, I got experience with coaching and then got certified as a coach. And then so now that's all integrated in everything that we do today.
Amazing. And I know for you, Lorie, the point of me even creating this series around inspirational leadership is to have more positive cultures where leaders are really walking the talk.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to hear from your perspective. When you think about inspirational leadership, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, knowing that you're going to ask me. For me, leadership starts with leading self. And I firmly and strongly believe in my heart that when we take the time to learn more about ourselves and, accept our whole being, like all the bright and dark sides, like everything, and really embrace it and feel grounded in that, then we can actually live from a very more whole and grounded place where we can show up with more confidence and courage to be ourselves. And what I feel that's missing in the world, not just in the workplace, but in the world, is that there is this resistance to really taking the time. Maybe there's some fear around like, oh my gosh, like when am I going to really find out about myself? But if you really do take the time to learn more about yourself and really come from that place where you love yourself, then you can then share that love and lead from that place. And we want to bring that same kind of leadership, inspirational leadership to companies. Because I feel that the leaders that we meet with that might lead from a place that more ego, maybe they're really thinking about themselves or wanting to, have more credit, like just all the kind of the opposite of what we think as leadership. I think it comes from a place of them just not knowing who they are and not being comfortable with that. So yeah, it's what I feel like. If they're inspirational leadership is if they really care about who they are and they get to know themselves and then they lead from that place and inspire others to lead from that place as well. That's what I feel is true leadership.
Yeah, such a great example. And as you know, I'm a firm believer in that as well. When you think about some of the, take it a step further. So now either they have done that or haven't done that. And you mentioned a couple. What are some of those really positive behaviors you see in those positive cultures when you see them actually playing out, right, within the organization? And then let's start there. And then I'd like to hear what you think are some of those, I'll use the word toxic behaviors, but sometimes it's not. I'm really cognizant of not saying toxic because then people always go to the other side of the extreme. They think of those like the narcissists and the sociopath leaders and all of those kind of people. And I'm not even just thinking of those. It could be leaders that, they're average, but some of these behaviors are really holding them back in terms of being effective. So what would jump out at you as the really important behaviors and then some of the negative behaviors that you see too often that hold them back?
Yeah, and I love that you say that, because I do use the word toxic, because there's this particular statistic from Stanford, from the work of Dr. Jeffrey Preffer, where he says that the toxic workplace is the fifth largest cause of death. And now I realize every time I say that, it's probably really scary, but it is one of those stats and research that keeps me up at night, because I know that we have an effect every day, whether we're at work or at home, with everyone else in our lives. So if we don't take ownership and responsibility for ourselves and how we show up, it affects the world. And that's why we're working within the workplace, because we know that if leaders are doing, are taking care of themselves, and then that's feeding down to the rest of their team members. So now that they take care of themselves, they can take care of others. And then it kind of feeds down to the rest of our families and our communities. Wow, what a world would that be, coming from that place. So the actual qualities that I feel that are needed, and that actually have that impact, that positive impact in the workplace, are ones that, the leaders that are really humble. They're really honest. They're very compassionate for others. They have strong empathy, but they also have self-compassion. I always want to balance it off with how they lead others, but they have to really think about how they lead with themselves. What is trust for themselves? What are my strengths? How do I show up? And then from that place, they can lead others. Because otherwise, the traditional way of leadership is so much like, okay, how am I going to, do these things externally and lead others, without thinking, wait a minute, that's not sustainable if I'm not already taking care of myself. Yeah. So yeah, humble, they're honest, they're transparent, they're vulnerable, they're courageous, probably all of the different qualities that you're attracted as well to when you meet someone. And then for me, it's not even just so much that they're the leaders, although that's obviously something that's so influential and inspiring when you see it at the top level. But imagine a world or just people in general who are just really kind and caring.
Yeah. And what jumps out at you is some of those behaviors that, and to go to the toxic workplace, because absolutely that's something that we really, we need to do something about. And I know you and I are both passionate about this, because it's impacting, and I love where you went there too, because it's not just impacting people in the workplace, it's impacting, because when someone's experiencing that, they leave work, and that's impacting their families, impacting their children, impacting their relationships. So it's much bigger than just what's happening in the workplace. So what are some of those damaging behaviors you really notice?
Yeah, the what's coming up for me are behaviors where people are, I want to be careful. So behaviors, let's focus on behaviors where they're kind of maybe holding back on sharing. Maybe they're not taking the time to really get to know themselves. So it's really always kind of blaming and shaming others. Yeah. They don't have like the courage to speak their truth or to live authentically or leading by example. I think I know there's good and bad ego, but when ego is used to really benefit themselves rather than serve others, I think that isn't going to support a more collaborative and participative environment. So anything in the opposite of actually leading self and growing others for the greater good, and really wanting to create this very positive environment. Anything that would make others feel unsafe or that they don't feel that they belong, I think is kind of those behaviors where it's just me versus we.
Yes. So, and it's so interesting, because when people are coming from the we, that's actually when they feel more fulfilled, because we're wired for human connection, right? So once they shift that mindset, they'll actually notice, wow, like this actually feels good. But it's them going on that journey to understanding themselves better and why they're doing what they're doing. So Lorie, from your perspective, I see a lot of organizations where there are some of these gaps in leadership, and the investments not being made. So what do you think the barriers are to organizations helping their leaders be more effective?
Well, high level, I think that there's just this fear of unknown, or, I remember the first time we started to share more of the work that we were doing, and there was either fear of the unknown or they just didn't really understand it. Like I'm always thinking whether the language that we're using needs to change to connect to the individuals, because if it's just it doesn't resonate with them, or they just don't know anything about it, then they're not going to make an effort. They're already thinking about so many different things. If I don't understand that, I'm not even going to go there. So I think there's a little bit of that, but also time. I think time also gets in the way. For some reason, they feel, well, there's so much other things that are fires right now that we need to kind of take care of. This is especially true for people who are startup companies, like founders. I always wonder, why wouldn't they think about values and purpose or people and culture right from the beginning? They only think about it when they're about to hire a group of people. Well, maybe we need to like have a very clear culture code or whatever, deck, like Netflix, and then we can kind of like put it on our website and everything. But that conversation needs to start when you first start wanting to create a company, because that is the thing that's going to hold you like staying I guess accountable, but also energized and inspired through all the ups and downs, to remind you why you decided to create this wonderful business. So I think there's the time, and then I think there's also probably just bad bias past experience. Like I think it's the same thing with human resources. Every time you say HR, people have a little bit of a response to it, good or bad, but there's a kind of this emotional reaction to certain words and to certain words or programs. And I think we don't even realize that there's this unconscious bias that's probably been passed on to us from past experiences, or someone said something, or we read something. Oh, investing in ourselves is too much, or we're not ready, or training is a waste of time, or whatever. And so I think there's all these different elements that are kind of holding us back. That's why I really believe in the work that you do, because if we work with the founders to uncover and they become self-aware and they learn for themselves, oh my goodness, I can't believe I just experienced this. I want my other leaders to experience it. I want my organization to experience it.
Yeah.
But like, it's really getting them to first walk through that door and say yes to it.
So Lorie, one of the things that you and I were talking about is sometimes it's hard for HR to make the business case to the CEO, or sometimes it's, so if we were talking right now to the CEO or helping HR talk to the CEO, what would you say around why this is so critical and so important?
To actually
invest. To invest in leaders and to create this positive culture. Like why should they be invested in this? Why is it so important?
Well, I mean, there's lots of different studies around, and I don't want to say it's a generational thing. I think it's not so much a generational thing. I think that it's just the human race has evolved. Yeah. I think when you look at the Maslow's hierarchy, we're already making more money than our parents did like 50 years ago. So we're all more stable. So we've already got those first levels of that hierarchy, dealt with. Like we all have access to a lot of, this is North America I'm more focusing on, because there's other countries, they're not quite there yet. But let's just say in North America, especially in the US, where there's a lot of, we're thriving. We're at a better place than we were before. We have access to information. We have access to resources. We all have homes. We all have better lives. So the next part of it is like, we want love and belonging, or self-actualization, where we want to have something that's more meaningful to us. We don't just want a job, because our parents just wanted a job because of what their situation is. Well, we're not worried about that now. We have access to anything. We could even create our own business. So it's now more, well, I just want to make sure that what I'm creating, or that what I'm part of, is something that's making an impact in organizations. So, there are companies that have been around for a long time. I would say they're more traditional. They're still doing quite well because they're a big, enterprise that have done really well for a long time. But these up and coming companies that are growing really fast, that are thinking about humanizing the workplace and really focusing on their people, I believe they'll be more sustainable. I think eventually it's going to get caught up, because even these younger generations are asking for more in these old school kind of traditional workplaces. They're already asking for it. So either the change is going to happen and you're just going to have to be reactive, or you can be more proactive.
Yes. Don't wait for it to be something you have to do it. Do it now, and you'll get the top challenge.
Stand out. Be the first.
Yeah.
Because also people want to be with leading edge progressive companies.
Absolutely.
Like the B Corp certified companies where they're thinking ahead about being a legacy or infinite company, as Simon Sinek would say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so much of the research on A-level talent shows they want to feel purpose. And I just not just A-level talent. We all want to feel purpose in what we're doing. We want to understand that bigger vision. You want to feel meaningful work when you're going there. And the more that people can understand that bigger vision, and I do love that the next generation is demanding it. But you hear sometimes with the generational where it's like, oh, it's just Gen Y and Gen Z and they want it. But then I'll talk to other generations and they're like, no, I want it too. It wasn't like that before. It was a different conversation. And now, of course, I also want to have a positive workplace where I can be excited to go there every day. So Lorie, you as a leader, so you're also a leader, and I believe we're all actually leaders, whether you have that by title or not. But you lead beautifully out in the world and as well in your organization. And as leaders, we all have things that we struggle with as well. So what have been some of your big lessons?
Oh, well, I was going to say a lesson, but the thing that when you reframe the question about what I struggle with, so one of my 5 strengths for StrengthsFinder is responsibility. Yeah. And as we know, when we overuse a strength, it can actually, hold you back or it doesn't feel good when you're overusing a strength. Yeah. And one of the strengths as a leader that I overuse is this sense of responsibility to make sure that everyone's happy, that they're getting enough work, especially in the work that we do because we're a professional service organization, and also our clients, and just wanting the best possible experience. And it's a struggle because I know that I can't control everyone's happiness. And this would be the same for like all leaders. Like you know, and you want so much for everyone. And at the same time, you can only do your best and put your best out there. And then the rest is that this is a partnership where they need to come together with you as well and show up. Like this is the same thing with engagement. Like every time we think about these low engagement, I'm thinking, okay, so what is the 13% doing? Like they're obviously engaged. How are they coming to the workplace and figuring it out how to work in an environment that might not be as thriving, but they're somehow engaged. Yeah. And I really feel that the ones that are engaged are again, take it back to inspirational leadership, taking the time to get to know who they are. Mm-hmm. They're really good with who they are. Mm-hmm. And so they're looking at it in a positive way. They have gratitude. They're just so grateful for the opportunity, and they're putting their best foot forward and doing the best that they can. And so I think that, so back to the struggle, it's this sense of responsibility and just to be more self-compassionate with myself, that I'm doing the best that I can as a leader. I'm still human as well. But we have a very transparent culture. So anytime I'm feeling a little bit lost or I felt like a conversation didn't go so well, I'm like Brene Brown, the story that I'm making up in my mind is, and we have such a very open culture that we can do that at any given time.
Well, and it's such a beautiful thing you pointed out to there too, right? The more there can be psychological safety and trust within an environment, the more people can share. So it's not you're just keeping that struggle to yourself, right? You're noticing, just like you said, this is the story that I have right now. And then the other people are there to support. And sometimes that's also being vulnerable, but also being willing to ask for help, right? Which can be something that I notice that a lot of leaders struggle with. It's what keeps them from actually working with me. And then when we start working together, they say right away, I wish I had done this 5 years ago. I wish I had done this 10 years ago. But it was taking that step. And part of that step was being willing to ask for help.
Yeah, and that would have been the lesson that I would have shared as well. That is one of the things that changed my life, is asking for support. I didn't realize the power with it. I didn't realize that it was this act of vulnerability and courage, or that I would create this wonderful human moment with people. I was born to, you do things on your own, be strong, be assertive, and you can take care of yourself or take care of yourself. So I never ever thought to ask for support. And through our Spark retreats, actually, when I started to ask for support with Eileen and the women, and saw how they were all kind of, feeling what that love feels like to receive.
Yeah.
It was eye-opening.
Yeah. Amazing. Lorie, this has been such a wonderful conversation. As we just close off for today, any final thoughts you want to leave with people, our audience?
Yes, take the time to learn more about yourself. You are whole, resourceful, and complete. You are love. And then it's a lifelong journey, and then continue to share that love with others.
What a beautiful way to end it. And thank you so much for being here today, Lorie.
Thank you.